In a world with so many movies to choose from, one hero will rise. Ladies and gentlemen,
The Movie Wire Podcast
with Justin Henson.
Fragile. It must be Italian.
I'm Buddy the Elf.
We're gonna have the happiest Christmas.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.
Oh my God, I shot my eye out.
I give you the Griswold family Christmas.
I say bah. Humbug.
Happy holidays and welcome to this oh-so-jolly edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We have a great show this week with 4 brand new reviews. This week on the show, slashing through the snow in a horror parody of the Grinch in The Mean One. Will Smith stars as a runaway slave that escapes his plantation owners to be reunited with his family in the Apple TV Plus exclusive Emancipation. A Godzilla-sized creature emerges in Norway that makes its way to a major city in the Netflix original movie Troll. And finally, the story of love and the challenges that go along with it. Love never stops surprising you even when you know how it ends in the new comedy drama Spoiler Alert. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows, what? A roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire Podcast
With Justin
You need
Henson.
people like me.
The podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
The story of love and commitment. This is the tale of Michael and Kit's 13-year relationship that takes a tragic turn when Kit is diagnosed with terminal cancer. And spoiler alert.
Middle child, 2 brothers. We're actually very close, but they live in different states.
Only child.
Childhood obsessions. Christmas, magic. My name is Michael,
You're a great dancer. You're a terrible liar.
and that's Kit. I've always imagined that my life was like a typical romantic comedy. You were so confident. I mean, you just stripped off your clothes like you're a stripper at a bachelorette party. And I basically shower with clothes on. I'll just shut up now.
Shall we go to your place tonight?
Here's my door. Before we go in, just open the door. Okay. What is this, Michael? Oh, you don't want to...
Oh my God, they're in here too.
Oh, Papa. I think you're very cool, and I'm worried that you're going to break my heart.
Mom, Dad, this is my friend, Mike.
A friend.
Yes, Mom, just a friend.
What is going on here? Who is this guy?
He's my boyfriend.
Your boyfriend.
I think it's great, kid. We may not look like it, but we are actually kind of hip.
Oh my God.
We were going to go to Woodstock, you know.
Slam.
I am. Let's just take a moment to appreciate this beauty. Kid, what is going on? Are you all right?
Come down off the ledge, Mike. I'm seeing a doctor tomorrow.
I'm afraid the news isn't good.
I was always afraid Kit would break my heart, and eventually he did. He broke it open.
I've only got one life, and I want you in it.
You have to run the race in front of you because that's all there is.
Looking back, this is less of a rom-com and more of a love story. He can't sit for 4 hours. We promised bed.
All the beds are occupied.
Get my husband to bed.
Well, that was Oscar-worthy.
Work for Shirley MacLaine. I'm sorry I never told you how good your ass looks in your khaki pants. I was afraid if you understood how beautiful you are that you'd leave me.
Thank you for inviting us.
It was Kit's idea. I was vehemently opposed to it. And like all love stories, it never actually ends.
Could never do this alone.
Spoiler Alert is a film that holds true to the title in its trailers. It doesn't hide the fact that it's going to be a whip-out-your-tissue type of movie. The film is based on the book and memoir by Michael Ausiello entitled, spoiler alert, The Hero Dies, about a television journalist that falls in love with a photographer that spent 13 years together. There's quite a uniqueness to not hiding the fact of what the outcome was going to be, allowing the audience to take in Michael and Kit's relationship versus waiting to see what the ending has in store for us. As I walked out of the movie, I ended up picking up a copy of Michael's book. Now, let me just say this before the review. There is no film adaptation in the world that a writer or filmmaker can come close to replicating the words, specific descriptions, and intimate thoughts that the author that experienced these events went through. The best they can do is show the love in their best interpretation they can, to show the respect to the source material. Being upfront and honest, the movie did what it was honest from the start. It made me cry, but the book made me bawl like a teenager that just got dumped and was walking out of the Notebook. There is an innocence between Michael and Kit that is engulfing, where we see no real dramatic fights. We almost see a weakness in both Michael and Kit, where there is a fear of losing one another due to their insecure vulnerabilities. This is where, spoiler alert, lacks more context that the source material gives. The film stars Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory as Michael and Ben Aldridge from Pennyworth as Kit. The two meet at a nightclub and at first appearance seem to be polar opposites, but have a genuine chemistry that's undeniable. The casting choice in this was spot on, but the filmmakers limit to how much we see in the couple in an intimate setting to really show us the struggles and challenges these two faced, and they ensure they just want us to see the dawn and the sunshine of the relationship. The relationship addresses topics that all relationships go through over time: jealousy, resentment, intimacy issues, money, so on, so forth. But we really don't get to see the work the two put into this, nor any resolutions, nor any real argument. We get subtle glimpses or disagreements, but we really don't have a looking glass into Michael and Kit's relationship. And I don't know, maybe it's just the cynical side of me to want to see the struggle, not just be told they struggled by scenes where it feels like they're spoon-feeding us what we need to know instead of letting us witness it. And I can understand a holistic message of seeing more of the positives and negatives when it comes to a relationship of the 13 years, but by doing this, the writers lack an emotional balance that the audience could relate with. Viewers are smart enough to realize in relationships there are always conflict and struggle, and if our characters are as likable as Michael and Kit and their chemistry is there as it is, we will want nothing but the best for these two characters. But the filmmakers hesitate with any specific negativity when it comes to conflict and hold Michael and Kit on a mantle without realizing they don't need to. The performances and chemistry between them have already won over the audience within the first half of the movie. If we hold them to this definition of perfection, we tend to see a sense of the too good to be true scenario. Now, when it comes to the lack of specific conflict between Michael and Kit, spoiler alert definitely doesn't give any spoilers about any specific internal conflict from each of the characters of Michael and Kit that both have a certain insecurity, but mostly Michael. But the film never again taps into this, which leads to a lack of character development in Michael and Kit. And again, more specifically in Michael, we see certain flashbacks of some of the trauma Michael had to endure during his childhood. These flashbacks with a comedy sitcom look and feel with even a laugh track is treated as a comedy, even though the topics of Michael's past can be quite emotional. And there's a lot to deep dive into this, how we keep our feelings trapped inside, and we give a version of what we feel is right and makes us feel good. And after the flashback is finished, the film doesn't really do anything to really move Michael's character forward. With no real character development, we are left solely on our character's chemistry, likability, performances, with an emotional topic that pulls just these elements together just right. And with Michael not having a lot of family nearby, the story focuses on introducing Michael to Kit's friends and family, in which they all add an emotional element to ensure that every character is relevant to not just the story, but to Kit and Michael's relationship. And it does a brilliant job on giving us that real loving feeling. When we are introduced to Kit's parents, Marilyn and Bob, played by the fantastic Sally Field and Bill Irwin, we are on the edge of our seat as Michael meets them for the first time, not knowing that Kit isn't completely out as gay. The scene is adorable, and as we see each interaction after that is even more adorable. And even though we don't see a lot of character development, we see the chemistry grow between all the characters. And this is where I give the film credit here. Within these elements, there is enough dialogue, likability, and chemistry, not just with Kit and Michael, but with the entire cast. The movie gives off a feel of inviting the viewer into a big, warm family that when we reach the climax, we feel we are losing a member of our own family. Now, maybe this was the intent of the movie by not going into details, the negativity, or the conflicts, but for me, this would have added a little bit more elements to the relatable nature. Spoiler alert isn't without its faults when it comes to teasing conflict, but never really showing us the resolve to any situation. Where it makes up for this is a completely satisfying cast ensemble of chemistry that grows holistically between all the characters, and the love for Michael and Kit. This is is enough to build an emotional attachment for when we reach the already knowing climax. We don't feel we're losing a character, but again, a member of the family or a very close friend. Spoiler alert delivers exactly what it seeks out to do, telling the story of a wonderful, genuine couple through humor and love that forgives, with an ending that you tell yourself, I already know what's gonna happen, and I'm not going to cry. But the power of these characters will pull your eyelids open and demand the waterworks to flow. I'm giving Spoiler alert a loving 3 stars. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, don't forget to check out my reviews for movies that just hit streaming and are available to rent or buy now, including A Missed Opportunity that turns into another good versus evil generic horror film about a demonic possession in Pray for the Devil that received 1.5 stars. A unique coming-of-age story that is as beautiful as you can get when it comes to a cannibalistic couple that falls in love in Bones and All, which received 3 stars. One of my favorite films of the year, and one that I predict will come out with the most Oscar nominations, is The Banshee of Inisherin, which received a very perfect 4 stars. And finally, Cate Blanchett gives a powerhouse of a performance as she plays a composer and maestro that has shadows fall upon her life in Tar, which conducted its way to 3.5 stars. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcast. And make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at MovieWireShow. And here is some quick news. Next week, I will be reviewing Avatar: Way of the Water on the show, but I am excited to say I will also be a guest on one of my favorite podcasts to really geek out over, and that's the Talking Smack podcast. And we're going to go more into a deep dive discussion about the new James Cameron film. Make sure to give the Talking Smack podcast a follow and listen up for that upcoming episode. You can also follow me on Twitter for when that episode is released. And lastly, I am also excited to announce that I will be returning once again to join my good friend Antonio on the Cult-Worthy podcast to bring in the new year. That episode will be announced soon, so make sure you follow the Cult-Worthy podcast and stay tuned for that episode. And now let's hear from my boys over at the Decaying with the Boys podcast. These fellas are the real deal, the funniest, and may I say the most charming guys around. They're absolutely infectious on the microphone, and each episode will just put a smile on your face. Let's hear from the boys now.
Welcome back to the Jojatorium.
Whoa, Matt, this isn't an episode, it's a trailer.
Well, what the hell's a trailer, Adam?
It's where we tell people what they can expect from our podcast, Decaying with the Boys.
Well, they can expect to hear us talk shop on pro wrestling, craft beer, horror movies, and pop culture, like Britney Spears' creepy father and stuff like that.
We've literally never talked about Britney, but we do take our shots at everything else he said.
Well, then I guess I can also tell them they can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and Anchor FM.
And don't forget to find us on all social media at Decaying WTB.
Cheers.
Inspired by a true story of a runaway slave, Peter, played by Will Smith, forges through the swamps of Louisiana on a torturous journey to escape the plantation owners that nearly killed him and to be reunited with his family in the Apple TV Plus exclusive Emancipation.
I heard it myself. Slaves are free. Sasu. Lincoln. We must get to Lincoln's army. 5 days through this swamp.
There are many ways to die in a swamp.
There are many ways to die here.
I will not be afraid. What can a mere man do to me?
Follow the sound of Lincoln's cannons.
My family is with me forever. I will look in triumph at my enemies.
Here is a news story exclusively on Apple TV+. Now, Emancipation takes place during the American Civil War, where President Lincoln proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves shall be then forward and forever be free. But again, this proclamation wasn't just a flick of a light switch where everything just changes, especially in the Confederate States, which were exempted from the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, this is where we focus on the inspired by and not based on a true story. While the historic events surrounding Peter are obviously actual events, but the story of Peter is used more as a symbol of multiple stories to represent stories from slavery. Now, Peter's true nickname was Gordon, who earned the nickname Whip Peter, as what would be true is a picture that circulated around towards the end of the Civil War, showing the pain and torture of slavery, showing Gordon's horribly scarred, whipped back. The story of origin of how Gordon got the scars upon his back is vicious, evil, and heart-wrenching, that Emancipation steers away from going into depth on, as well as other historical elements, but rather treats the characters of the movie as more of a symbol of multiple stories and personalities from that era as a representation. Emancipation has trouble figuring out what it wants to be, and part of the problem is due in part to Bill Collage and ways he attempts to drive the story. He borderlines a loosely based biopic with stuff we would see in an action picture, and these are the parts that really push the artistic license to the brig of being inspired by. To give an idea of Bill Collage's vision, his previous work includes 2016's Assassin's Creed, The Transporter Refueled, Exodius Gods and Kings, and the comedy heist starring Ben Stiller, Tower Heist. There is a lot of believable actions and decisions made by Peter as he attempts to escape and run from his trackers, but it starts to lose credibility when we see Will Smith get in a fight with an alligator. And we have numerous scenes like this that really makes us question how real the events are, and it takes away from the real danger, which is those that are tracking and chasing Peter. Collage feels the need to add additional unnecessary elements that takes away from the point of what this film should be about. And he has no real depth to the character of Peter. We see no emotional response as we see Peter in the elements alone with his thoughts and the challenges that he faces. And this isn't a stab at Will Smith's performance. He does just fine here, but there really is no dialogue here to make him stand out or even that really challenges him. Collage prefers subpar fluff over substance, and he just seems lost on what he wants to do with Will Smith's character. It's almost like he used Wikipedia as the only resource while gaining historical elements and character study while writing this script. Let's take Will Smith's character, Peter. We know he loves his family. He tends to stand up for what's right, no matter the risk to his own life. Then all of a sudden, he is taking injury after injury, wrestling and alligatoring, and he keeps trucking along like nothing's wrong. It's like we have a version of the Equalizer movies only set in the Civil War. You can pinpoint the characters that Collage has trouble with the writing because they remain silent for most of the film or barely say anything at all. And that's where we see Collage write in a lot of this fluff to keep the movie going because he has nothing else to say with his characters and he doesn't discover the characters that he's writing about. The filmmakers bank purely on the era and the topics as an emotional impact, but that doesn't give the audience enough to really feel for the actual characters. And the topic is horrific by itself, but to truly show the impact in a film, we have to put emotion to it, to really feel what our characters are going through, to truly make an impact in messaging. This is what separates a film from truly trying to be an entertainment feature to an impactful feature. The one character I felt was written well as a symbol of not just one man's hate, but an era of hate put into one character, and has some clever dialogue to paint the picture of this to the audience, and that's the plantation owner Jim Fassel, played by Ben Foster, who gives a performance of subtleties to almost represent almost a Venus flytrap of hate. Now, the film goes for a unique look by director Antoine Fuqua at almost a close look to being shot in black and white, but it really isn't. There are slight color hues added to some scenes and a brighter hue to some scenes that needed a lighter tone. And it is easy for one to get into the symbolism of why it was shot this way, especially in a setting like Mississippi. We have a beautiful but intimidating setting in Mississippi. The emotional impact would have been more relevant to stay with audiences by the use of more color. But I patiently await what Fuqua's main intent is here. And then I realized by the time we get to the end of the film, there was no point to this style. This was just a clever basic technique to make it look fancier than what the actual shots in the film was. There was no real point to the way it was shot. It certainly didn't add anything to it. It even at times became distracting to the viewer to watch. Emancipation is a noble attempt on a story, but where it fails is completely 100% in the writing by Bill Collage, and the tone of the film, which is more of a distraction at times than intriguing. The performances are good when the dialogue supports it, but that's not often. If Apple wants to continue these inspired by or based on types of movies, they better get more involved into what the history is and ensure the written material respects it. In this case, it does not. I'm giving Emancipation 2 stars. Deep in the Dovra Mountains, something gigantic wakes up after 1,000 years in captivity. The creature destroys everything in its path and quickly approaches Oslo in the new Netflix exclusive Troll. The Troll is a new Netflix exclusive film from Norway. Okay, first and foremost, let me get this out of the way. The film was written by Espen Auken with the story by Roar Uthaug. If I took the script and some original shots of the Jurassic Park trilogy, Jurassic World, and the story of 1998's Godzilla, add some King Kong to that, then cut each one into bits and pieces, toss them up in the air, and tell Espen Auken and Roar Uthaug to come up with something slightly different using these pieces, this would be it. There are times in Troll when familiar lines are delivered only slightly reworded, familiar things are seen only in a different environment, and familiar shots are made where it is so close to some original movies that it's almost disgusting to watch. This one should be defined as just a higher budget knockoff, and it doesn't even try to hide this. Now, I would have loved to place blame on solely the writers, but the director wrote the story. Roar Uthaug, who directed the 2018 Tomb Raider and 2015's The Wave, this man banks on using ideas from other films instead of using original ideas. He is a Michael Bay of Norway with his repetitive, stick-to-the-generic environment value of giving audiences what they want with no true thought put behind it. And when there is an original shot or idea he has, he speeds past it as though he isn't confident in his own ability to create an original idea. So let's go through the motions here. There is a giant monster, or a troll if you will, that is unearthed, marching through the mountains and valley towards a major city as the government doesn't know what to do. They hire a paleontologist, Nora, played by Anne-Marie Willman. Why her? We don't know. The major players don't want to understand the creature, they just want to kill it, but our paleontologist naturally wants to save it. Nora teams up with her father that she doesn't have a good relationship with, and he's kind of the town nut. And a soldier that obviously will play out as some stereotypical love interest. Nora tries to give her professional opinion to the government, but of course the government doesn't believe her, and she plays almost as an identical character to Matthew Broderick's character in 1998's Godzilla, only with a hint more confidence. There are multiple scenes where lines and shots were presented where I literally had to yell at the screen, "Oh, come on." We've seen that before. Now let's ignore the borderline multiple movie knockoffs for a moment. The film is pleasing to look at from the beautiful cinematography, and the one thing I do like the style of when they leave the monster to the imagination. But when we finally get a glimpse of this creature, it's underwhelming and lacks a sense of awe. It quickly becomes non-threatening to the eye, with the exception of the size of the creature. The filmmakers get that right in one aspect, but again, this is an example of right where we get the sense of an original idea. The film fast forwards as quickly as possible to go on to the next idea somebody has already envisioned. The visual I am speaking of is a scene where we have the monster blend into their natural environment. This could have been used in multiple times throughout the film to add a bit of curiosity, but instead it gives us a glimpse of a one and done shot. The writers and filmmakers add no additional threat to this mystical creature with the exception of size, which gets dull after about 10 minutes. There is so much that could have been added to a film about a mystical creature or thought to be an extinct creature. There could have been scenes of observation where we learn something unique about this creature. There could have been a single creator in the crew of this movie to actually have an imagination to add something from its lore. But the film is dedicated to not just being another generic monster disaster flick, but a copy of a copy of a copy of a monster disaster flick. The performances are decent given the stereotypical dialogue, but at times the cast can almost feel how generic this material is, and you can almost feel in their performances their eyes rolling in the back of their heads as they deliver their lines. The cast almost shows a sign of complacency, and you can tell they don't believe in the written material. They're just there for a paycheck. Netflix is getting desperate with its original material that it has been pumping out lately, from using big name stars with no good material to this piece of absolute garbage that uses big monsters with copied material to attempt to entertain. Troll is a very sad attempt at a low budget with a big budget feel, with nothing original to show for it, and its only intent is to give us a big monster to gawk at for a couple hours, but the movie can't even get that right. The monster is as generic and boring as the human characters. If you're looking for a good troll movie to watch, check out Troll Hunter from 2010. There's at least some creativity and awe in that film. And a message to the filmmakers: if you're going to write and make a monster movie, at least have the guts to dare to use your own imagination. But I will give a little bit of credit to the filmmakers though. While watching Troll, it challenged me to use my imagination by imagining a much better movie. I'm giving Troll 1 star. It gets so hard to keep track, and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. In a sleepy mountain town, Cindy You-Know-Who has her parents murdered and her Christmas stolen by a bloody, thirsty green figure in a red Santa suit called the Mean One. But when the ravenous, Christmas-hating creature begins to terrorize the town and threatens to ruin the holiday, Cindy finds a new purpose: trapping and killing the monster in an obvious Grinch parody, The Mean One.
Remember that story about Cindy You-Know-Who? When her Christmas was stolen, she knew what to do.
Why, Santa Claus? Why?
But what if I said that's not how it went down?
You gonna be okay? Because we can turn around right now.
No. Poor girl. Her mother was killed. Her mind snapped.
Did you ever find the Christmas killer?
Never got a reliable description of the man.
He's out there! What if the Christmas killer is back?
This town cannot go through another Christmas killer thing. Not again.
Us folks down in Newville, we liked Christmas a lot. But that thing that lives just north of Newville does not.
What is it?
The Mean One. He's slippery, he's elusive, he's a mean one, that mister.
I'm not gonna be a victim anymore. Time to roast this beast. You're a dead one, mister.
Now, I am so pleased we are seeing more and more of these small indie films pop up in theaters, with a lot of big budget films surrendering themselves to streaming deals. Theaters have a great opportunity to reinvent themselves with more independent and indie films with stories to tell, to give them a shot at a true theater experience. And I predict the future of theater will be these types of movies. All movies, from B-movies to indie darlings to international films, all have the right to be seen, to adhere to a wide range of audience with different tastes. I can really appreciate these movies like The Terrifier 2 and now The Mean One with their intent, all the way to The Banshee of Inisherin and The Phantom of the Open, to all get wide releases in theaters across the US. Now, The Mean One is an extremely low-budget film, and it's best seen with certain expectations. Ignore the low-budget feel, know it's a parody, and that everything it does is with intent, even though at times it can come across amateurish. But that's the point of this parody, is to feel over the top and at times amateurish. This is a movie that justifies a serious element, but inserts elements of over-the-top seriousness to be over-the-top midnight movie fun. To give an example of the absurdity, there's a scene where we have one of the characters rappel down a cave, giving us the thought there was only one way in or out, only to escape the cave by walking just a few feet in front of him out on foot. The Mean One has pure cult film written all over it, and it's best seen with a group of friends or some large audiences and a lot of drinks. I will emphasize this again: don't take it too seriously. Take it for what it is, a film parody that does some clever things. It avoids the copyright by avoiding the G name in a funny scene that I did enjoy, and in other scenes referring to our villain as the Mean One. It also subtly renames the town to Newville, slightly renaming characters and using the fun, bizarre look of the 2000 film starring Jim Carrey, with a brilliant casting choice that already has somewhat of a cult following, actor David Howard Thornton from the most recent Terrifier 1 and 2. Now, The Mean One follows a different version of the Grinch storyline as we know it. In this version, we have Cindy Lou You-Know-Who change the path of our Mean One by stopping him from stealing Christmas, but this time Cindy's mother intervenes and interrupts the classic scene with an act of violence to our green classic character by attempting on what she thinks is saving her daughter Cindy from a monster. But by doing this, what she does is create a green monster that goes from stealing Christmas to murdering any that celebrate it, from a single Christmas bell, Christmas carol, lights to a simple present. The film even recognizes this alternate telling of the story and even drops a line hinting that in a parallel universe, the story of the mean one might actually be a different outcome. The Christmas killings leaves the town of Newville Christmasless, gray, and bland, and yes, this also leaves a lot of plot holes in the story. But the holes are so obvious that it's childlike basic and it comes across as humorous. Now, even though there's an appreciation I have for the attempt of what the mean one is trying to do, those going into the theater and watching may not understand the humor it's going after. And that's understandable, because during the first half of the mean one, the film loses a little bit of credibility on some post-production values, such as the editing, which is noticeably harsh here. It feels like it's rushing through the transitions instead of taking its time. There's a shot where we see a pivotal character, Doc, played by John Bigham, who is a resident that believes Cindy you-know-who in her claims of the green monster that killed her mother. This shot shows us Doc for the first time sitting in his car just staring out the front windshield, and it's a very awkward shot based on the surrounding scenes, where it comes and goes extremely quick, where we just kind of tilt our heads and say, wait, who's that random guy that just popped in for 5 seconds in the middle of a random scene? It's almost comical, but this is one piece of the film that I don't believe was intentional, due to the fact we were shown a lot of hard cuts like this that even involve just sky shots of moving clouds that is hard to watch. This is where the audiences will lose a little bit of credibility of the other humor it tries to accomplish that actually is trying to be intentional, such as the over-the-top acting, the overdone blood splatters, to the cliche characters, all the way up to the physical training montage to beef up just a couple days before the final battle that is actually so over-the-top and low budget I couldn't help but laugh. But what some viewers might not understand is that these are the pieces that are intentional to be humorous. The mean one, even with its low budget, misses some great opportunities. If it could just slow down just a tad to analyze each scene to think how practically this could work. Low budget films have done this in the past, but it's about not banking on the one and done shots and scenes and just saying let the editing take care of it. Director Stephen LaMorte does a decent job on presenting a low budget, but utilizes too many up close shots during pivotal moments. It's like he's telling a secret and the audience isn't invited. Now there's a scene with a bus full of Santa Clauses that come into the town restaurant, and without spoiling anything, the lack of wide angle shots and patience turn these scenes from something that could have been something very special and a crowd pleaser to just a shrug of the shoulders. The film was written by Finn Cobbler and Flip Cobbler also plays Cindy's you-know-who's father, Lou. And the writing I will give a shout out to, it holds up to the cliche parody and never really faces an identity crisis when it comes to the dialogue. It stays true to itself on what it wants to be, which is just plain ridiculous. We also have our film's producer, Amy Schumacher, who plays, of course, the cliche sub-villain, Mayor McBean, who anytime on screen usually shares her re-election stickers throughout the movie, to the point I think I would vote for her. The entire team of the mean one have various roles, and this is what I love about small budget films. It's they all have an investment in what they're trying to accomplish and have multiple roles in ensuring the success of vision. The film does start to gain its confidence levels in the second half, but still suffers from editing issues. But on the positive note, it does give us more of David Howard Thornton, who's beginning to be seen as a Charlie Chaplin of horror characters with his energetic but silent commitment to the roles he plays. And director Stephen LaMorte underutilizes him from his camera shots and screen presence. Thornton was great to watch when he was on screen, but the camera never really takes its time to really appreciate our main protagonist. Now, I enjoyed the mean one way more than I should have, but at the same time, it's still a greatly missed opportunity based on basic technical aspects that will lose credibility from the audience on what kind of movie it's going for. Audiences will have a hard time looking through the low budget aspects of it, but this is the type of movie that will see a good cult following once it hits streaming. And for what it is, it was a fun time, but the most basic technical aspects tends to hold the movie back, and it sends the film backwards from a really good time. But you know what? Have a few drinks, bring a few friends, turn your brain off, and enjoy the complete ridiculousness of it. But for all the right reasons. Even though I appreciate what it's trying to do, and I wouldn't mind a sequel to fill my new guilty pleasure, but for all the right reasons, I'm giving The Mean One 2 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And do me a favor, make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film. and make sure you support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at MovieWireShow or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.